where nothing can last. Money is rare, there's none to be found, so don't think that I'm tight if I don't buy a round. I'm on a low budget. Yes, I'm on a low budget. I'm always said that. I'm on a low budget. I'm a cut price person in a low budget land. Say it again. One more time.
Bring in, as promised, Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker Michael Moore. Michael, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is Rachel Maddow. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Keith.
There's been a spike in the desire to own guns in Connecticut. Statewide, over 90,000 guns have been authorized for sale. You know how I feel about it.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Good evening, my fellow Americans, my fellow patriots. You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me here live. It's live every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m., sometimes 12 a.m., depending upon the guest. And I just want to tell everybody, we are actually broadcasting from our new and improved studio. That's right. We worked very diligently over the weekend, and with some help from Tim. I just want to let you guys know, actually Tim's going to be joining us. It is Monday, Munitions Monday, but Tim, we put some of his trade skills to work this weekend, and he built just an outstanding table for us here and bench and everything and stuff. So it's just incredible. I will have to say the quality of our friendship in the Patriot community is just outstanding. I literally called Tim on Thursday, said, "Hey, Tim, I'm moving the studio to the house. Wanted to spend a little bit more time with the family instead of, commuting back and forth to our other location." And so we got here. And, Tim volunteered. Saturday morning, he was here, tools in hand, and we got it built out. There's a picture up there at the patriotfb.com website. That's patriotfb.com for all those who have never been out there that are listening to us on the first time. Yes, we have changed our address. We are now going, instead of going to the Midnight Patriot, you actually just go to Patriot FB. We figured that would be a better area for us to better serve all of the masses. There's just so much information out there on that website. It's just incredible. So we wanted to kind of consolidate a little bit so we're not bumping all over the place and stuff. But you are at the right place if you're listening to us at patriotfb.com. Click on the live link, Patriot Radio, News Talk, and Music link. And, when we're not doing shows, when we're not doing the Midnight Patriot here, we're doing the AVN show in the morning with Michael Evans from 8 until 10. And then, of course, we follow that up with J.J. McCarty at 2 to 4. And then roll on into the Midnight Patriot in the Midnight Hour with me, your host of the Midnight Patriot, Jeff Norton. And between that, we actually got fully licensed. So what does that mean? Well, that means we can play classic music, classic rock, and modern country. So it's big doings. We're growing, and I just have to say, it's attributed to you guys, our audience out there and everything. So tonight with the show, obviously we're in the new studio. We have a whole new setup. This is I thought I had state of the art. This is actually state of the art. the setup that we're using now is just utterly incredible. And, so we're probably going to have some kinks, some bugs that we're going to have to work out and everything. But I just ask that you bear with us as we get those things worked out with the audio quality. I just want to say, for those that are joining us on Patriot FB in the chat room and stuff, how do we sound? Do we sound okay, Joe? Hey, Rodney. Hey, Rodney. I see Rodney out there. I haven't seen him in a while. Hope things are going well for him. But like I said, please let me know. Do we sound okay? Are you hearing us? Are we coming through? Are we being piped into your homes? Just let us know. And I see that. Yep, there we go. So, everything's looking sound. Hey, Joe, how's it sounding, buddy? Is everything clear? Reason why I'm asking, this is all new stuff, wow. But, I got to tell you, it's impressive. But like I said, we're going to be working through some of the kinks here. And so just bear with us, as we try to get through this and everything. And like I said, we just found out one of our issues, which I will fix here in a jiffy as we get our programming done and everything. So we're going to take a break. When we get back from the break, we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, it's Musicians Monday. If you'd like to join in the conversation, give us a call at 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. Also, our local number is 262-997-0607, 262-997-0607. Tim will be joining us, I'm sure, here in a few minutes, but we'd still love to hear from you. Now, on tonight's show, like I said, we got the studio put together, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to put the show prep together. But I will talk about, there's a impending mega default. You think that America's banking system is in trash? Well, wait until you hear about what's going on in China. So we'll talk about that. Well, of course, we'll talk about Martin Luther King. Just a lot of stuff. So let me get my bearings here, get some of the equipment worked out, and try to figure out what's going on here. But it looks like our automated programming is not working. But we'll get it worked out. That's live. That's what live is all about.
Advertise at patriotfb.com for more details. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
At this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care.
And will never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends. I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and visit stjude.org today.
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot radio show and podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me live every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time. And on the web, 24/7, 365 days a year at www.patriotfb.com. That is www.patriotfb.com. Now, like I said, new equipment. We're learning how this stuff works. It's not only do we have new equipment, new processors and everything to try to keep the audio levels all the same and sounding clear and everything, but we it's a new programming and it's actually an industry standard piece of equipment. So please bear with us here as we try to work through these issues and everything. But, we'll make it. We'll make it. It's live. That's the nice thing about life. We're supposed to live it, right? We're supposed to experience it firsthand and everything. But I just want to say, today is Monday, so we're going to be talking about Munitions Monday. But if you'd like to give us a call and join in the conversation, give us a call at 262-997-0607. Or, of course, our 1-800 number is 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. Would love to talk to you about issues and the topics of the day. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of press on here as we wait for Tim to join us. I hope I didn't work him too hard over the weekend, but we had a good time. So, one of the things I'm learning, it's crazy. As you get older in life and you try to be all prim and proper and, try to, be this something that we're not, to be honest with you. And when I started this show, I, tried to be all professional, and there's nothing wrong with being professional. Don't get me wrong. We're not sliding, we're not degrading down into the pits of hell here. But one of the things that I realize is that we got to have fun. We got to enjoy what we do, and when we get too serious and we start getting really, really serious, it starts bringing us down. And so one of the things is obviously, if you guys look at the picture out there, we have the dump button, which I can push all day long, and it's not dumping. And the reason being is because I disabled it. One of the things is that, it is what it is. We're a podcast. If there's something that you want to say, you want to get on the air, give us a call at 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. But, we had the dump button that I'm pushing, and it's not working because it's disabled. I realized, we tout ourselves as being a show that does not, and a website that does not censor. Now, with any healthy debate, to be derogatory or to be foul, is not going to help your argument. And we just ask, be conscious of that. You want to turn a bunch of people off, become foul-mouthed and everything. We're not going to censor you. I'm just, but I don't have to listen to it and everything. But, we did get rid of the dump button as I'm sitting here. You can hear it in the background. I'm pushing it, and we're still on the air. We're not going to dump you. So if you'd like to join in the conversation, if there's something you want to talk about, give us a call, 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. Of course, you can go to our website at patriotfb.com, go to the chat section, and you can type your messages in there. I will try to multitask and do two things at once and watch the chats and try to get you guys into the conversation through the chat. But right before we went off the break, more importantly, that's right. I am partaking in a little adult beverage here. Made in the great state of Wisconsin, Miller High Life, the Champagne beer and stuff. So, so we got our beer, just enjoying life. And what else is there to do? We're getting hit with another snowstorm. For those that keep up with that kind of stuff, so much for global warming. They were saying today, I was listening to Chicago as I was coming in, actually going to the airport and coming back. We've already blown through our annual snowfall for the year. And it isn't really, to be honest with you, hasn't even started yet. February is usually our worst. February and March is usually the worst time of the year. So much for global warming. But, it was kind of strange. They were saying out in Wyoming, did you hear about that? It was like 3 or 4 degrees, and by the afternoon it was 68, and then it dropped back down. It's supposed to be negative numbers again. So there were some strange things going on there. And of course, the global warming. Oh yeah, see, we got global warming, but it's just it's incredible. We don't know what we have. All I know that we do know that we have is we got a lot of educators out there, a lot of elitist professors that get their paycheck based upon selling hype and lies. This thing called grants, that's how they live. They go from grant to grant. These guys are grant whores. I mean, literally. They literally go from grant to grant. That's how they pay for their existence. Unlike you and I, who actually, if we want to prove something, that means typically what we have to do in the real world, in the world of real adults and business, we have to mortgage our homes, sell our cars, put our family's financial future on the line, and then we have to go out there and prove it. That's typical capitalism. That's pure capitalism. But these professors, they don't have to do that. No, they write a paper. They actually don't write the paper. If you have ever been in the collegiate world, that's what they have undergrad students for. That to write those papers and to do those grant proposals. They have staffs. If you go to the university, you want to see how bogus research is done in America, go to any major university. They literally have departments of grant writers. That's right. So they can't even They can't even ask for the money themselves. They have someone write the papers for them, and of course they get a great return. It's quid pro quo kind of stuff. So global warming. What a crock of crap. It's just unbelievable. And people believe it. People believe it. And that's the crazy thing, is that we actually believe, why does the government? The government doesn't have to pass a law or anything like that to get people to comply. All they have to do is put it on mainstream media. And then everybody, the poor bears, the poor bears. But it's just unbelievable. But when we get back from the break here, like I said, we got this new system out here, and so it is kind of taking over. What was that show? Terminator? It's kind of taking over here. We have a few issues. We're going to work it out. Kind of do some things manually. But when we get back, I promise, we are going to talk about it. Obviously, Tim is caught up in some other things, which is great. I understand, he's got a life too. We're definitely going to be talking about this mega bank default that's coming. This thing is huge. This possibly could lead to World War III. And when we get back from the break, we're going to be talking about that, obviously. We're going to, we have some more things in the deck. We're talk about, one of the things that we've been talking about on the show is police brutality. Another instance. Once again, it's almost a daily occasion. But you're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. Join me on the web at www.patriotfb.com.
www.patriotfb.com. A social network for patriots. Get involved. Support Stone Anthony for president. www.stoneanthony2016.com. Put a real American in the White House.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost,
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends.
I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
Well, they say that the country's done. They say that the stock market's gonna crash. They say that every single one of us is gonna lay down while they walk across our back. But I'ma stand up. I'm gonna put my fists in the air. No, I don't wanna have to bring my guns, but I'll be ready if it goes there. But you can let me of what's left of the USA. We're hardworking, honest, and we make our money the good old-fashioned way. But you can lay it down if you wanna. You can run away if you wanna. You can pretend that this is totally okay if you wanna. You can play it dead if you wanna. Forget what they said if you wanna. Turn your back on the country needing you right now. But I don't wanna. No, I don't wanna. Well, I say that the country's fine. With a little hard work and prayer, we can get her back on her feet. 'Cause I believe she belongs there. So let's stand her up, brush off the dirt and dust. Lady Liberty needs our help from every single one of us. But you can lay it down if you wanna. You can run away if you wanna. You can pretend that tyranny is totally okay if you wanna. You can play it dead if you wanna. Forget what they said if you wanna. Turn your back on the country needing you right now. But I don't wanna. No, I don't wanna. But I don't wanna. No, I don't wanna. So let's stand up, put our fists in the air. No, we don't wanna have to bring our guns, but we'll be ready if it goes there, yeah. So let's stand up, put our fists in the air. No, we don't wanna have to bring our guns. No, we don't wanna have to bring our guns, but we'll be ready if it goes there. Ready if it goes there. Ready if it goes there. Be ready if it goes.
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me live every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, and sometimes 12 a.m. It depends on the kind of mood that we're in. And to be honest with you, if we have a guest on, then of course we'll go to 12 a.m. But you can always get us live at www.patriotfb.com. That's www.patriotfb.com. So it looks like we got our phone situation worked out. Let me see as we get these dialed in and everything. Tim, are you there?
Yes, I am, Jeff. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, sir. How are you? Sorry about that. When we moved the equipment over, there's these buttons called auto, which are auto answer. So without those pressed, the phones won't pick up and stuff. So I do apologize. So how's everything sounding over there? Is it clear on your end? Yep.
I can't hear you now, Jeff. I could hear you in the beginning, and now I can't hear you.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if we can turn this up a little bit. How about now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Tim. Hello, sir. Man, that's the nice thing about live. Live. Tim, are you there? Tim, can you hear me?
Yes.
How about now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. All right.
Now, it's fading in and out.
Huh. I'm wondering if that's a cell line, if that's your actual cell.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I can try again here.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
All right, let me try again.
All right. So Tim's going to come back and stuff. And like I said, we're working these issues out and everything. It's live. It's all live. So how about now? Tim, can you hear me?
Nope.
Still can't. Hold on.
No better.
Not better. How about now?
A little better. Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem is when I do that, I don't think anybody can hear me. That's the problem. So let me do a little board work here. You can hear me now, though, right?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. The problem is that no one can hear me.
Uh-oh.
So that is an issue. Let me go out here and see what the guys are saying, because I have guys that are kind of listening. They're kind of listening on the air as I'm talking. All right, Joe, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
So, hold on for a second as we work through this. Joe, you're on the chat room. How do I sound? Am I coming across loud and clear? All right. So they're complaining that they can't hear me and stuff. So, you know what we're probably going to have to do? What we're probably going to have to do, Tim, is as we're working through this board issue and everything, maybe we're going to have to do it another time, because what they're hearing is, hold on, let me try something here. Tim, can you hear me? Yeah. So Tim, what's going on? Tim, are you there?
Yes.
All right. So this is live. Can you hear me now? Is everything clear?
Well, I can understand what you're saying, but it's not 100%.
Gotcha. How about now?
Did you have to reconnect? You had to reconnect a bunch of stuff after we got done Saturday, didn't you?
Exactly. I think that's what the problem is that we're trying to get all of that worked out. How about now? No. Even worse. Are you there?
Yes.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you just fine now.
Okay. That is really weird, because I went back to the original settings and everything is fine. So,
okay.
Wow.
Well, good.
Well, there you go. We worked it out. We worked it out. Yep. I got my associate producer, Joe, is listening to us. So, Joe Sullivan. Joe.
Yes,
how do we sound?
Sullivan.
Joe Sullivan. Joe, how are we sounding, my friend? Let's see if he's typing. We'll get it worked out. That's the thing about live.
It's live radio. If you don't know where to start, go back to the beginning.
All right. So I sound good. And Joe, can you hear Tim? How does Tim sound? Great. All right. So there we go. There was a lot of wiring. I mean, you saw the Kaggle wiring that we had sitting over in the pile. It was, and then on top of that, I said, well, this is a good time for me to start adding equipment. Yeah. So not only did I get my standard equipment moved over, but then of course I actually added some more equipment that I needed to do. And what the equipment does basically is it levels my voice and your voice, because we've had times where people have called in, and especially like Stone, someone with a deep voice, it would be really loud, and then with someone like me, it'd be really soft. So, so we added what they call an automated gain controller, and that's what I was fighting with there. Was trying to get it, but we should now, your voice, my voice, music, everything should all be the same level, so we don't have those ups and downs like we used to and stuff. So it's yeah. Well, hey, it is what it is, right? It's live. Right. It's live. It's not taped. So, man, I just want to tell you, thank you. I am sitting here at this desk, and I am loving it.
Well, good. I went on. I was in the chat room, and I went to Patriot Facebook, and I saw the photos that you just posted a few minutes ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive. It was funny. Sandy surprised me. She called me Sunday. I had a flat tire in my truck, so I was bummed. I was more furious than I was bummed. Brand new set of tires, had a flat tire. So, but Sandy lifted my spirits because she called me and she's like, "Look, I'm ready to come home." And so I actually picked her up from the airport today, and she's even looking at it, going, "Wow." This is nice. And she's already kicked me out of the office upstairs and said, well, since you've got this nice studio that you built downstairs, you can start working, you can work down there, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that and everything. So,
you better be careful. You're going to spill out into the rest of your basement.
Yeah, we are. It's, it was funny. Well, now that like guys like you are local, I hate to say, I'll shut up. I'm not going to say it because there's no reason why we can't put another, build it out a little bit and start doing live shows, in the studio and stuff. And no, we'll keep it the way it is. If we expand another time, I mean, it's going to have to be somewhere else. Hopefully, it's going to be somewhere in the Western Plains in our bug out location and everything. So, but no, I appreciate it. It's just incredible. I can't tell you how much. How much. Oh, this is incredible. I just can't. I can't describe to you how this makes the show. You're going to see a vast improvement in the show. Everybody will, because it gives me a workspace that I can actually work in.
Right. Well, now that you can sit down, I take it you found a chair that was adequate.
I did.
Good.
That was an adventure.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny because I went shopping with my daughter and for a chair, and of course she's like, "Well, Dad, you like doing the show standing up, so why don't you get a chair that you can sit down, and if you want to stand up, you can stand up, but if you decide you want to sit back down." So we got one of these drafting chairs, but this thing goes to the moon. This chair, it was this thing. I mean, I'm a tall guy. I mean, I'm a big guy and I'm a tall guy, and I'll tell you, this thing at its fullest apex, it was funny. I couldn't get on it. I needed OSHA would have required me to have a harness, and I'd have to have a 3-point in and all that stuff. This thing is way up there, but I had to go pick Sandy up from the airport, obviously, but I wanted to come down here so bad and get some work done in the studio, some promos and stuff. So, no, it's phenomenal. It's just, I mean, there's very few things that leave me speechless, and having a proper work area to do this show from is just, it's just incredible. But, I'm speechless.
Well, you should see my garage.
Yeah, with your benches and everything. So, yeah, I didn't have time to sit down and I was going to let you know, Steve Rosenthal just popped in and said, I should say Steve, but he's in the chat room. So if you're out of the chat room, you see his name anyways. But he told me to tell you he loves your second book. He loves your second book. He just popped into the chat room and everything.
Good.
Yeah, I have not started. I will tell you, I have not started to read it and everything. I will though. I'll sit down.
That's perfectly fine. I mean, you have your own copies. It's kind of like, I wrote the books and I intended them to be used and reread. They're instructional manuals. They aren't like a novel where you just read it once and put it on the shelf and that's it.
Yeah. No, they are. I mean, I can't wait to read. I do, like I said, I felt bad because I haven't gotten to, but it's one of those things where I just want to sit down and just kind of focus. I don't think it's one of these books. Well, I don't know. You tell me what's the best way to read it. Should I read it from cover to cover, or should I just, when I run into an issue or a question, go to it, reference it, or both? I mean, what's the best way to read your book?
I think the way I intended the first book was for the new reloading enthusiast to buy his starter setup, and that would be a single stage press and a set of dies, and have some brass and primers and powder and bullets on hand, and to just kind of use I think I intended it optimally for the reader to use and read my book while he's going through the initial learning process, so that, when you're setting up the seating die, if you want to fully size the case, you turn the die into the press so that it just touches the shell holder when the ram is all the way up, and then you have your die set, and then you lock the lock ring in. And you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then go from there.
Yep.
That's how I intended it. And then the second book is more, there's 14 chapters. There's the history of reloading. That's intended. I intended that as just informational. And then there's advanced case preparation, advanced loading techniques, and then most of the other chapters are informational. I put the chapter on how barrels are made in there because, like we've discussed, I did work for a barrel maker. Mm-hmm. I have a long-term friendship with Boots, and I thought that it would be beneficial for everybody to understand how barrels are made and what makes one manufacturing process better and different from another manufacturing process, like we discussed Saturday when I was there.
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, just a ton of. It was a good time. I mean, I learned a lot. Not only did I get this great studio, but I also, we learned a lot about the three types of barrel. The main ways of manufacturing barrels, and the pluses, pros, and cons to each, and everything. So, with that, what were we going to talk about tonight?
Well, it just so happens that I was on Patriot FB. I can't remember, this morning, I think it was, and one of the people on the site posted a comment about concealed carry. And then I noticed a couple of the people had commented, one in particular, I can't remember who it was. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to mention any names on the air anyway. That's not my way. They commented that they have since regretted getting a concealed carry permit. And I thought I'd like to talk about that for a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I'm kind of, go tell. I'm kind of curious. Now I'm going to start digging back in the archives to see. But, yeah, go kind of give us yeah.
Yeah, it was the poster who posted the original posting was one of the ladies on Patriot SD, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, sure.
And anyway, I do not have a concealed carry permit, and I have no intent of getting one. And I have two reasons for that. Mm-hmm. Number one, I believe it's licensing right. And the other reason requires me the relating of a story. And the story goes like this. I believe I've mentioned I have an uncle, my Uncle Charlie. He lives down in the People's Republic of Illinois. He was married to a very nice lady for 43 years who passed away a couple years ago, but his former father-in-law, his late father-in-law, was a German immigrant. And it just so happens that his late father-in-law was also a survivor of the camps, the Nazi concentration camp.
Gotcha.
Now, his late father-in-law was not Jewish. He was not a gypsy like me, like I wrote. He was not a communist. He was just a pure German, native-born German, like probably 50 of his past generations, at least, if not 100. Okay, his family had been, in Germany for as long as they could remember. His crime that got him sent to the camps was that he had a Nazi gun card because he had one gun. Mm-hmm. He had a little pistol that he kept for personal home protection. Yep. It was a little Browning 32 automatic, Charlie told me.
Yep.
And so consequently, when the Nazi Gun Control Act of 1936, I think it was passed, and then they had the registration, and everybody who had a gun had to get a gun card according to the Nazi Party. He dutifully went and got a gun card, and that's the reason why he got sent to the camps.
Yep.
And I think I would love to go on national TV and tell all 300 million people who live in this country that story.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks that, this isn't registration. Well, that's a bunch of malarkey.
No, it
is.
No, it is registration. I mean, just look at let's talk about it, Illinois. There was a Lisa Madigan, who's their attorney general, actually was trying to compel, and thank God, the commander of the state police, because for those that don't know, in the state of Illinois, you have what they call FOID. And everybody who owns a firearm has to have an FOID. And the purpose behind this, and even the ATF, I've talked to the ATF about this. This was prior to the national register, the background checks, is when Illinois passed this law.
Oh, and they passed it in 1968, right after the GC8 got passed.
Exactly. And so, even the ATF will tell you, I talk to ATF agents, and even the ATF will tell you it is nothing but a moneymaker for the state of Illinois, because it serves no purpose. Because now, you do have 4473s or a state form that has to be filled out on all gun purchases. But in the state of Illinois, they require everybody, you have to get a photo ID, and you have to have a photo. If you want to own a firearm, or be in possession. If you want to go to a shooting range, say you don't even own a firearm, you want to go to a shooting range and you want to shoot a gun or whatever, you have to show your FOID card, which means it's a national registry or a state registry. Well, Lisa Madigan just last year, everybody's like, oh, it's not, no big. And I used to believe like that. It's like, why, if you want to own a gun, what do you have to hide? Right? Why are you hiding? But now as I grow up in this and I start learning more, I start doing the education and stuff, you have people like Lisa Madigan who feels, and I'll throw her name out there. I don't care. I'm sure I'm going to get a phone call or another nasty letter from her or from her department. But I don't care. The reality of it is she went to the commandant of the state police who oversees this program, the FOID, and she said, we want a database. We want the list of everybody that has a FOID card. Everybody. Now, thank God, the commandant of the Illinois State Police said, absolutely not. And oh, by the way, sue me because you're not going to get it. You're going to have to go through court to get this. Now, what is scary is that is one man standing up against the people like the gun grabbers like Madigan. And of course they're going to blame all the gun crime on the guns and not on the people. They got to coddle the people. Well, that's their number one source of revenue. But the thing is that she did, and it was the state commandant, the state police commandant that said, absolutely not. I'm not giving it to you. You ain't going to get it. You're going to have to sue us for it. But think about it. If it wasn't him, say it was someone else. Say it was maybe the chief of police of Cook County here in Chicago, who's anti-gun. And if he was the commandant, and that's not a stretch, people. I mean, that's not a stretch. And it was just, the people of Illinois, the good people of Illinois, the gun owners of Illinois should be grateful for the fact that this commandant said absolutely not, absolutely not. And because that information would have then been in the hands of a political group who then would have used that information. God knows what they would have done with it. Well, look what happened out on the East Coast, where the newspaper, they printed everybody's address and said, "Oh, we just want you guys to know there's a guy next door to you with a gun." Let every criminal know. Let every criminal know where I live, so they can come and steal my guns. Not
just that, but then the criminals will know. Well, maybe we shouldn't put at that house. If we're gonna do a home invasion, let's do the house next door that we know doesn't have a gun.
Exactly. Well, I mean, take it one step further. There's also people, where they register the guns. Now, you can only assume or deduct, because when you register the gun with the state or through your FOID card, there have been people in Illinois that have that have gotten arrested or had their homes raided, and because there was other guns there that weren't registered, they went to jail. But the police, they're like, well, you had a FOID card, and I guess the FOID card gives the state police or law enforcement. When you get the FOID card, you're agreeing to give up certain rights or protections that you and I can afford. You're giving those up. Where it's ludicrous. It's insane. Like I said, I used to come of the belief of, what do you have to hide? But now I'm realizing I got a lot to hide. Yeah, I really do.
Well, Steve, here's the thing. It's, that's one of the rights that is guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, and that's the right to privacy. And I remember, when I was in the service, it was right after Congress passed a law in 1974 called the Privacy Act. And consequently, when I was in the service, when I was first in the service, we had to fill out all these forms, and with every form that we had to fill out, we got one of these copied forms that informed us of our right to privacy according to the Privacy Act of 1974, because I enlisted in 1975. And I find it interesting that didn't last very long. From what I understand, that practice has been totally done away with. And so it's not so much, that is such a confrontational, bogus question. What do you have to hide?
I got everything.
And my response now is, why? Why do you think you have a right to know?
Yeah. No, I'll be the first one to tell you, I got a lot of things to hide. I really do. And I'm not, I'm not saying that, criminality or anything like that. I got a lot of things to hide. I don't want the government to know what I have. I really don't. Listening to the show, you can deduce. None of their business. Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. It is none of their business. If I so choose want to own 15 AR-15s, that's my business. That's my prerogative. If I want to own, a Remington 700 that's decked out, with a 20-inch barrel and everything, that's my business. That's not their business. And now I'm like I said, is that when I was naive in this, and all of this, I'm like, well, what do they have to hide? They're law-abiding citizens. But you're absolutely correct. A 4473. I can't tell you how many times. Well, in the short times where you get phone calls, they want to know where this gun went or that gun went. And I will tell people out there, when you fill out a 4473 or either your state form, they never ask what gun you purchased. They don't. And I will be honest, they have never asked me what gun, particular gun or firearm you have purchased. Now, they know you've purchased a gun because we can't fill and call those forms in unless you have purchased a firearm. But they never asked. The only time that they've ever asked is if the gun is recovered in a crime or something like that. They usually call you and say, the serial number, gun, and who did you sell it to, and send us a copy of the forms. And we require a court order or a court document before we provide that information. And that's just the way it is. I know a lot of gun shops, they just call them and oh yeah, here it is. They just fax it right over to them. I'm like, no, I need a court order that, I am securing this information and I need a court order. I need the legal documents before I release it. You have to compel me legally to release this information. And but I do want to let people know they don't ever ask what gun you're buying. They can care less. Now they do ask how many guns are you buying. That usually trips a flag. And I'll tell you, if you buy more than 5 at a time, that does flag. Anything over 5 or above, you do get flagged in their system. And trust me, there are someone in the FBI office who is now pulling your, doing a little bit more investigation on you. So that is the magic number, by the way, 5.
Well, so. I personally think all of that, the background check and everything, it's all about, I personally believe it's all about building a database. That's what I think it's about. I don't believe them for a minute that they are not saving that information. I don't believe it for a minute because they're all liars. As far as
that goes in the database. They type it in. I hear them typing it in, and I hear the printout of your background. No, it's going into a database. This is my thing, and like I said, when I was naive to this, I was sitting there going, well, this is the thing. With the proliferation of firearms, you and I know darn well that if you want a gun, legally or illegally, you can go on a weekend and you can get a firearm. So, you can. There's no secret. There's no secret about it whatsoever. I can go to any gun show. I can go to my neighbor. I can go anywhere. And I'm not promoting lawlessness or whatever. So please, ATF, if you guys are listening, don't be kicking in my doors tomorrow. But you know darn well that anybody can do that. So to me, a background check is a useless process. It's basically a way to say to the American people, well, we're doing something. But you know darn well, a person who is a criminal of nature or who's a criminal can get any gun they want. Number two, a person who has a moment of insanity for whatever reason, that 4473 or that state background check ain't going to stop that, and it's not going to predict it. So it's a useless exercise. It really is. Everybody goes, well, then you get people, well, what about the domestic batterers? Well, do you know what? The domestic batterers, didn't use a gun to batter someone. What they did is they beat them up with their fists, or they beat them up with whatever. My thing is with domestic batterers, and I actually had this instance where a lady called and was wanting to find out if her husband picked up a gun or whatever, and I just flat out told her, I said, ma'am, I'm not going to tell you what he did or didn't do, because frankly, if he passed the background check, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't legally withhold that. I said, but if you want, you can come in here, and I got a couple law enforcement friends who are here, and they'll be glad to take you out to the range and teach you how to protect yourself. And she didn't think that was too funny, but I mean, my thing is look, that thank God, you do have an alternative instead of living your life in fear. Why don't you figure out, and I'll hook you up with professionals, and we will train you and teach you how to protect yourself. My daughters, when they become legal of age, where they can carry, they will carry. That's just, the way it is, because it is an evil world out there. And there are people out there that want to do evil things to people. So, like I said, I have seen the light. But I want to go back to this. So they didn't, their concern obviously is the fact that they got a concealed carry. Now they're in a database. Was that the crux of their concern?
I think so. Okay. It wasn't a very, very long post.
Sure.
The individual just wrote that that they have since had second thoughts about getting a concealed carry permit, and I don't know where the individual lives. What state they live in, or whatever. But I just found that interesting.
Well, I open carry. When I carry, I'm an open carry. The only time I conceal carry is when I'm somewhere if I'm somewhere like where I'm at a crowd of people, where I'm going to be at a crowd, and I want that extra level of security, knowing, but when I am, for the most part, I open carry. I have no qualms whatsoever about it. I want people to know, especially when I'm transporting stuff, I want them to know. I want it to be, it's a deterrent. I got a gun, and
it is.
Yes,
it is.
Yeah, it's a deterrent. It's kind of like, don't mess with me. And like I said, the only reason why I conceal carry is where I'm somewhere where I don't want to, where I'm with a crowd or in a crowd of people, and I want that extra level of security to where, where people are possibly bumping up against you or something like that. And that's when, and I'll go to a conceal mode at that point. Or when I'm traveling in certain states. I don't want them to know I carry. So, that's what I can, but most of the time you'll see me, we live in a great, state of Wisconsin is an open carry state. So.
Yes, that's, it's nice.
Yeah, it is. And, but even then,
of course, a lot of the western states are the same, but.
Yeah. Which, like I said, is nice. I mean, I will say this, with the concealed carry law in the state of Wisconsin in the past, I get a lot less flack when I open carry. And a lot of it has to do the way, and I'll tell people this, it's the way you present yourself. I have never had an issue with someone when I open carry. Now, I've had people kind of look at me funny and kind of, but they don't, and it's all about the way you carry yourself. If you're a goof and you walk around, and you're always putting your hand on your weapon and stuff like that, that makes people unnerved. But if you're a professional and you treat it just like your cell phone, you hear what I'm saying? When
yes, I do.
It's all about the way you carry yourself in public too when you have a firearm. Yeah,
it's also about maturity.
Yes, yeah.
See, that's I see that as a big as a big problem. Is that there are quite a few people out there who are immature.
Yeah,
and.
Oh,
it's an unfortunate thing.
Yeah, I mean, no, I know people that who intentionally, and they've told me this. I open carried in Walmart. You should have seen their eyes. You should have seen the people looking at us and doing. And I'm like, why do you bring that attention to yourself? Why would you do that? I mean, and you're right. It's the maturity level of people. I don't. To me, a firearm is no different than you hanging your hammer off your tool belt when you're at work. It's part of the job and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. You're absolutely right. Maturity does play a big part in it. And I've had one scenario where I was in a grocery store. I was picking up lunch for the rest of the crew at the shop, and typically when I'm transporting firearms to and from, or when I'm doing, I always carry for security reasons, obviously, when I'm going to the bank and stuff. But I stopped at a grocery store, and it was funny because a lady actually came up to me and she goes, she was like, "Officer, there's someone, I think he's trying to break into a car over there." I'm like, "Well, call 911. And she's like looking at me, and I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm not a cop. Call 911. Call them, get them over here." But like you said, it's the way you carry yourself and you present yourself in public. So, well, but hey, that's the nice thing about this country. You can choose to, and you can choose not to. I mean, that's the beauty. Yeah. Yes,
that's another thing that I've been writing about, and that's. A lot of people, it seems to me anyway, that a lot of people have lost track of the fact that one of the fundamental principles that this country, this republic, it's not a republic anymore, I've written about that also, but anyway, that this country was one of the fundamental principles that this country was founded upon was the freedom to choose your own destiny, as long as you do not infringe on anybody else's God-given natural rights.
Yeah.
You have a right to do pretty much anything you want.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're thinking about it, if you're Harvey Weinstein and you want to do a movie that depicts gun owners in the most negative way that you possibly can, you can do that. You have every single right. And it's really funny. I will use my right to carry a firearm and to protect my country and my fellow citizens. I will use that in his defense. If he was sitting there on the street, I know a lot of gun owners if Harvey Weinstein was sitting on the side of the road and God forbid someone was attacking him, I would use my fire. I would protect him just like I would protect anybody else.
To call 911.
Yeah. Call 911. Have a nice day. No, if the other part of it too is say this government becomes oppressive, and they don't like the speech. They don't, regardless of whose speech it is, they don't like his particular style of speech. Maybe they don't like, what's good for, this is the thing, is that, when you start taking rights away, a lot of people will say, well, it's a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. Well, that pendulum swings mighty wide to both directions. So a law that you pass today, I remember, the Patriot Act. Everybody was talking about how under Bush, they were talking, the Dems were all out there talking about, oh, this is oppressive. We got, these camps and those camps, all this stuff. And now, the Dems are in power, and you're hearing the same thing from the Republicans on both sides. That pendulum swings both ways. And when you start restricting freedom of speech for one group or one type of speech, wait 4 years, because it more than likely is going to swing the other way. And so my thing is that, that's why you can't inhibit freedom of speech. And guys, like Michael Moore and Weinstein, I use my Second Amendment to protect their First Amendment. And that might sound ludicrous, and they might not get that. But the reason why they have a First Amendment right is because there's guys like us who will protect their First Amendment rights with our Second Amendment rights. Because I can tell you, this government, if they could shut speech down and control it all, they would. They absolutely would. Now, unfortunately, guys like Weinstein and all those guys would probably be part of the propaganda machine, the Goebbels of this government.
Yeah.
But
and I believe in actuality, the mainstream media, the mainstream media is controlled.
Yeah,
I mean, that is it is the controlled press.
Absolutely,
it's the controlled media.
Absolutely,
that's what I believe.
Well, no, and that was one of the things. We have the opportunity to actually broadcast CBS. If you listen to most radio stations, at the top of the hour, they usually do the CBS news feeds. CBS News, Charlie. And we have that opportunity. We're licensed in the same way as they are, so we actually could do that. And I was contemplating about putting that on Patriot FB, but then I stopped myself and said, why would I put mainstream government-controlled media on our airwaves? And so what we're doing, part of the reason why we did the upgrade, moved everything home, is so we're going to start producing our own news feeds and getting those out to alternative news, just like CBS. But it's all it's all propaganda. This media is owned, paid, bought for by our government. I mean, the millions and millions of dollars that goes in. And then the other thing too, like this net neutrality that's going on now with the FCC. And so it's owned. I mean, the licensing that I had to go through to be able to play music is completely different. The rules that I have to go through at Patriot FB to play music is completely different than the rules that a radio station has to go through. Now, the music's exactly the same, but I have a whole different set of rules, and it's all about protectionism. It has nothing to do with common sense, because they can do it. And if I'm a music pirater, who would you think I would go after a radio station anyways? They broadcast at a higher quality than we do over the internet. So I don't know. It's just it's all about protectionism, and the media is owned and controlled by this government. So
So
yes, sir.
Anywho,
let's get back to guns.
I don't know if you had a chance to go to my website, but I did post the second installment of Defensive Handgun 101, and I wanted to cover a couple more suggestions that I have concerning training. And one of them is a lot of people I know don't realize this, but air guns are excellent training tools.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We actually talked about that on the show, Prepper Recon. comes on Thursday, and one of the things that we had a whole show on air rifles and air guns and, you know, practicing. And actually, for some individuals who can't own a firearm for whatever reason, there are air guns out there that you can hunt with and are more than powerful enough that you can hunt with.
Oh, so. I have a 22 caliber air rifle.
Yeah.
That is quite powerful and quite accurate. With the lightweight pellets, it has a velocity of 1,100 feet per second.
Yeah.
With the lightweight pellets, and it's deadly on coons and skunks and all kinds of critters like that. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand: like, when you use an air rifle, particularly a target-grade air rifle. Now, a target-grade air rifle, generally speaking, they have a muzzle velocity of usually just under 600 feet per second. Most of them are listed to be about 575, and the reason why is because the target-grade pellets are designed to be the most accurate at that velocity. But my point is that when you practice with an air rifle or an air pistol, because of the fact that the muzzle velocity of the weapon is so much slower, I'll just throw some numbers out. If you're using an AR 223 and you're just using plain regular 55 grain ball ammo, the muzzle velocity of that out of a 20-inch barrel is listed at about, supposed to be at 3,200 feet per second, but usually a lot of times it's about 100 to 150 feet per second slower. But now a 22 standard velocity 22 ammo is target grade 22 ammo is at around 1,080 feet per second. That's 1/3 the velocity. An air gun is again half as slow as that. So, if you're using an air rifle to practice your shooting, so you're practicing in your garage, you're standing up, you're practicing offhand, it takes that pellet 6 times longer to go down the barrel than it does an AR, which means that you have to really practice your hold and your trigger control and your follow through. But particularly, it really reinforces your follow through, because it takes that pellet so much longer to go down the barrel as opposed to a 55 grain bullet going down the barrel of an AR. And a lot of people don't realize that, and that's the reason why practicing with an air rifle or an air pistol is so beneficial, because it really reinforces the fundamentals of marksmanship, where you have to really practice those fundamentals. You can't be sloppy.
Yeah.
And then when you go to the range and you're shooting your AR or your M1A or what have you, it really shows that you've been practicing. I'll tell you that right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, no, I remember when I first started shooting with my father, that was the first thing that we actually did is, shooting pellet and indoor, obviously, and I didn't understand that, and the whole, you're absolutely correct, is that it was one of those things that my dad instilled in us as young. When I was doing it was, get good at this, and then we'll go out to the gun range, and I get that. I absolutely get it. I mean, and you can go crazy. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, I used to buy. I'm gonna give a little plug. I mean, I used to buy all of my air guns from Champion's Choice there in Smyrna, Tennessee. Just a great group of guys, and very knowledgeable. I mean, that's you can get the Hammerleys and all of the upper end air.
Yeah, those are pretty
these are
pricey tools there.
Yeah, these are not toys. I mean, these are I mean, people don't realize you're absolutely correct. I mean, it was like I said. I did not shoot a hammerlet, but I mean, I shot a Walther, which is not a bad air rifle or air gun either, and it does make a world of difference. I'm
kind of partial to RWX. I have a RWX air rifle that I practice with in my garage.
Sure,
and
they're fun. You could, Well, I don't know. When you were working down here, there was little. My daughter. That's how I got my daughter. Shooting is I bought her just a Crossman, just a simple Crossman. We put up the a little carpet backdrop, and sat here in the basement for one winter and shot before she got her. And then once she, was proficient and safe with that and everything like that, then I moved her up into a Browning. She got a Browning 22 that I tricked out for her. So, that's still sitting in safe. I actually got to take that out and we got to go shoot. It's been a while since I shot it, but it's not. People think air guns. You shoot your eye out, kid. The whole deal. It's a great training tool, and it really is. And you're absolutely correct. Is that it will force you into shooting fundamentals very quickly, and it's one of those things that I can't overstress it. That's why like I said, we had a whole show on it. Before about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right before the holidays, we talked about air rifles, and especially with our winters that we're having here. You don't want to get out at the range and everything, and with the cost of ammo too. And
remarkably, the cost of pellets has not really gone up at all.
No, it hasn't. And like I said, there are alternatives. I've seen 50 caliber air rifles. It's just unbelievable. I mean, these things are incredible, and you'll catch them out there on the shows where they're actually hunting big game with them. And so it's one of the things. Now, getting back to the thing, Steve wanted me to ask you, and I'm just going to read this off of the chat room. I said, I love a little bit more information on casting tolerances. Tim gave a perfect mix of tin, lead, and antimony for his mix. But my question is, can you cheat a little based on what type of lead mix you have on hand, and what would be too soft to shoot? That was a question from Steve.
Well, it depends. It depends significantly on the type of bullet and also what you're shooting it out of.
Sure.
Now, generally speaking, if you're going to be loading for a pistol, semi-automatic pistol, you want the bullets to be fairly hard.
Okay.
Because when the round is stripped off the top of the magazine and chambered, if you've got soft bullets, they're going to get damaged going up the feed ramp into the chamber of the barrel.
Gotcha.
On the other hand, if you're using a revolver, I've known guys that have used pure lead gas check bullets in revolvers with very good results. I mean, particularly if you're going to be loading the ammo for hunting, the soft lead really deforms really well, really quickly upon the impact of the target.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of schools of thought. I know I mentioned in the chapter on bullet casting the Wilk gas check designed by Ed Wilk. It's a particular adjunct process that's done with gas checks during the casting process. Most of Ed Wilkes' experimentation was with rifle bullets and not handgun bullets.
Gotcha.
But if you're going to get into bullet casting, I strongly recommend getting Lyman's cast bullet manual.
Yep.
There's a lot of information in there over and above what I covered, and like I've said before, my books are just an introduction. Particularly, I did have a chapter on bullet casting in my first book and my second book, and I just covered the very basics in the first book, and yes, I did cover more. I wanted to cover one of the things I particularly wanted to cover in the chapter in my second book was paper patching, which I did. That was one reason why I had that chapter in there. But the standard linotype mix is pretty good. And then if you want to go a little bit harder, what you do is you increase the antimony by 1 or 2%. The antimony is really what makes the material hard.
Sure.
A 1% increase in antimony will raise the Bresnell hardness of the lead by 5 or 6 points.
Gotcha.
Me personally, I prefer gas checks, and simply because they work. They do their job. See, I just recently read somewhere, in some publication I got, that somebody who was trying to maintain that the majority of leading from lead bullets doesn't come from from the bullet going down the barrel, the lead rubbing off the barrel. Well, that's incorrect. The vast majority of the lead, when a barrel gets leaded up from shooting lead bullets, is from the hot gas from the powder melting the lead off the base of the bullet.
Gotcha.
That's the reason why. That's the reason why those little gas checks are called gas checks.
Yeah.
Now, I know I've done a lot of research just recently because while I did do a lot of bullet casting in the past, I kind of got away from it for quite a while, and I'm rebuilding my my casting equipment. And I've learned recently from looking at what's commonly available as far as bullet molds is that the selection, unfortunately, for bullet molds, it seems to have decreased. Where I remember many years ago, I had molds to cast bullets for both 45 ACP and 9mm that had gas checks, and now they're no longer available. And then there's some other ones that I had a long time ago that I've since learned that they're not available anymore either.
Yeah.
So, but there are custom mold manufacturers out there that will make just about anything. You know, the old adage, given enough time and money, you can get just about anything.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's tool and die guys that can, that will make it for you. I mean, they're out there. And I'm trying to think. I was out at Brownells not too long ago, and they still have in stock most of the popular rounds. Most of them. Your dies. So.
For bullet casting mold?
For bullet casting.
Well, yeah, they do. Don't get me wrong. There are quite a few out there available. Like 240 grain semi-wide cutters for 44 caliber and 45 caliber, and 158 grain semi-wide cutters for 38 caliber. Yeah, there's quite a few out there. Now, I am associated with a guy who lives up in La Crosse who has a bullet casting business. He's an older gentleman. He's retired, and he goes to a lot of shows, and he's now selling. I just recently had a conversation with him about a week ago. He's now selling 40 different bullets of various calibers and weights. So, and he's told me, and he's agreed with me, that he only uses, when it comes to bullet molds, he only uses steel molds. And there's a few reasons why, and I did go into them in my in the second in the book, in my chapter on bullet casting in the second book. So I won't rehash that, but that's where I got some of that information, and some of the information, or most of the information I put in the chapter was from my personal experience. And the paper patching technique I learned from my Uncle Charlie.
Gotcha.
He's the old style guru.
Gotcha. No, and he's actually the guy too that you said he's a flintlocker too, right?
Pardon me?
Is Uncle Charlie the also guy he's the flintlocker? He's the guy that's the muzzle or the
yes.
The
yeah. He's really into 19th century firearms, like the Civil War and the Indian Wars. He has a wealth of information about that, and he's a retired college history professor. And he's also a retired Army major, but that's beside the point. But that, his thing is 19th century, and he has consented to write articles. I've got one posted that he wrote on the website, and he's told me that he's been busy.
Yeah.
I don't know doing what, considering that he's retired, but who knows?
Well, yeah, my father would tell you he's busy too, getting ready to play his next round of golf. So
no, Charlie does not golf. He's just like me.
I'm just saying is that it's amazing though. Busy to us and busy to them is completely different than most. Now, I do have one more question, and can you buy? Or where can I get? Is antimony? Is that how you pronounce it? Antimony.
Antimony, yes.
Yeah. Can you buy that separate, or do you? I mean,
yes.
Okay. So is there a supply? Is that something you get from a Brownells or from?
I believe Brownells has it. I believe Midway has it. I don't know if any of the. I haven't checked on whether any of the other big internet, reloading suppliers have it, but. And then there's other places you can get it. Like this guy up in La Crosse, he told me where he gets his, because he uses. I asked him what he's been using, and he uses wheel weights with every. Trying to think now of what I believe he told me, for every 100 pounds of wheel weights, he adds 5 pounds antimony.
Gotcha.
And usually when you buy antimony, it comes in a 5-pound ingot.
Yep. Gotcha.
So that's his formula. It's just plain old wheel weights. Now, for everyone listening, if you go, you have to understand something, that not all wheel weights are made out of lead anymore.
Yeah.
Some of them are made out of zinc, and those are usually marked, ZN, And there's also wheel weights out there now that are just made out of iron.
Yeah. Yep. No, yeah, you have to be very, I mean, one of the things that a buddy of mine, you can't do it anymore because lead's getting up there obviously in price, but a buddy of mine used to buy, he would hang out around the old boat docks, and every year or 2 years there would be a boat, you know, a sailboat that someone didn't pay their storage on, and they would take possession of it, and you know they didn't want anything, so he would buy it. Literally, they would pay him to scrap the sailboat. Well, the keel, he would take and that was one of the things, is that he would, you know, 3,000-4,000 pounds of lead off the keel, and on some of these smaller sailboats. And you know, you got to be creative.
There are a lot of sources if you
you got to be creative.
If you if you're creative and scrounge around, you can find this stuff. But I want also everybody to know that don't try and dismantle any old car batteries.
Yeah.
First of all, it's not really worth it. I did it once when I was down in Florida. I took one apart to try and get the lead out of it. 4 bullet casting when I lived in Florida in the 80s, and I think I only got like about 3 pounds of usable lead out of an entire battery. So it's not really worth it, because it's first of all, it's kind of dangerous. I mean, you're dealing with even though the battery might be dead, the acid in it is still caustic.
Yeah.
And the other thing is generally speaking, now you can take an old dead battery to any place and get any recycling place will give you. The last time I sold one was you could get like $3-4 for one.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot more than you by taking it there. You're absolutely correct. I mean, and then the other thing too is that once you crack the battery open, it's almost near impossible to dispose. You can't take it they won't take it at a recycling plant at that point.
No, they won't.
And so what are you going to do with it? You know, throw it in your backyard so your neighbors are going to see it? You know, you're absolutely correct. It's not worth it. There's other ways of, hook up with your roofing buddies if you got any, because they still use lead flashing. Like I said, hang around the docks, especially around here at the Great Lakes at some of these boat yards where people don't pay. Like I said, I had a buddy, and that's, he would get paid to salvage sailboats. They would pay him to haul off a sailboat. And it's already been gutted, but 9 times out of 10, no one takes the keel. And, you literally would walk out with 3,000 pounds worth of lead right there. Now, some take a magnet with you, though, because some keels now are made out of pig iron or steel. But you can still find them. You can still find them.
Yeah. I did discover one good use for old battery acid, though.
What's that?
It's great for eliminating fire ant hills.
Okay, all right. There's a lot of great uses for sulfuric acid, my friend. But I actually, believe it or not, I've used it, and I'm going to get in trouble. But I've actually used. You can use it for doing. Not bluing. I'm confused now. For anodizing, you can actually, it
will etch aluminum really quick.
Yeah, you can do cold anodizing with it, with 2 lead, and then the sulfuric. You use it's 5 gallons to 20, so there's your ratio there. With 2 lead screens with current running through it, and you can use a standard arc welder and do your current, and then you can anodize. If that's what you want. I've done it. I haven't been as successful as now. All the anodizing we do now, we actually send it out to an aerospace manufacturer that does it for us. But because they use a our anodizing, most anodizing you'll do is a hot anodizing process, which is a type 2 anodizing. Our anodizing is a cold process. They keep the fluid, the solution, because when you run current through it, it heats it up, and that actually causes, you don't get as good as a coating, or you're not building a good honeycomb structure with the cold anodizing. With the hot anodizing. So we actually take it to have it done cold anodizing, which is a type 3 anodizing, which I will tell you is tough as freaking nails. I mean, these things are, it's just incredible, the strength. I mean, they say that anodizing is about as strong as diamonds. Aluminum anodizing, if it's done right, will have the same hardness as diamonds, which I can only go with what the geeks tell me. So, well, with that, my friend, is there any? Do you want to give everybody your website where they can reach you?
1776men.com.
Yeah,
1776men.com.
That's right. And you can also get, Tim, I've noticed you've been out at Patriot FB a little bit more, my friend.
Yes. My webmaster is the one that takes care of regular Facebook. So, yes, I go to Patriot FB on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I've seen you out there. And, of course, you guys, you're out there listening, everybody that's out there listening here to the Midnight Patriot radio show and podcast can always go out to Patriot FB, look up Tim. Your last name, of course, is how do you pronounce it, Tim? I'm horrible with names, as we all know. It's Seward. Yeah, Tim Seward. So go out to patriotfb.com, type in, actually just in the search, just type in Tim, he'll pop up, and you can send him a private message, his books. Now that I've got a copy of his books in my hands, so I will take pictures of them with the iPhone, and we'll get them up into the marketplace and get those things loaded. I know I've been threatening that for a while now. And you know what? I do apologize. On Saturday, it got away from me because I wanted to sit down with you, but the computers were down, obviously, as we were moving. I wanted to sit down with you and get all that stuff loaded up for you while you're there.
And I actually had a flash drive in my pocket with each one of the book covers as a JPEG image on the flash drive, and I got home and I reached in my pocket and I looked at the flash drive and I remembered, we were supposed to do that.
There'll be other times. There will definitely be other times, my friend, and stuff. So I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out of your evening and spending it with us. And like I said, if there's anybody that has any questions, feel free to go out to patriotfb.com or 1776men.com, which is Tim's direct website. And
yes, I have a contact page on. For some reason, my homepage has a different address. 1776 Men is my online magazine that I initiated. Like I said last week, because I've reached a point in my life where I feel comfortable sharing a lot of the information I have squirreled away in my brain.
Yeah.
My homepage you can get to my homepage from 1776 Men, and that is timsewardllc.com. And then there's the contact page. There's a menu in the upper left-hand corner that has all the pages. The home page is at the top, and then I want to wholeheartedly invite everybody to go to my page and read everything that I've written, not just, Defensive Handgun 101, and I have an article up there I wrote about heating with wood, because I've been heating with wood for 15 years, and I've got quite a few other articles that I'm working on that I'll be posting over the course of the ensuing months.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We need to, get out there, read. I mean, you got some great articles. out there. And I know that I know that you have Boots. Boots is writing for you or doing something.
And I do have another one that he wrote that I will probably be posting. I don't know when it's going to come up. That one's going to be about lathes, and then I also wrote a subsequent one, and I covered a few other things about lathes for anybody who is interested in learning some of the fundamentals of machining.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't know if I'm sure as time progresses, when Boots has the time, I'm sure there's other things that he's going to write about. I don't pressure him about doing anything. It's just, when I get something from him, then I edit it and put it up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I have to tell people this. If you are in the Patriot movement and you're into self-sufficiency and stuff, you need to get yourself accustomed. And you can go out and buy for $600 or relatively a 3-axis CNC machine. Now, granted, you're not going to be cutting steel with it. You're not going to be doing anything. But fundamentally, you need to start learning that stuff, because there's going to be a time, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see it in our lifetime, where a lot of the firearms that we can buy in a store are going to go away. Think about it. If the House was owned by the Democrats, all of your modern AR-15s, all of those would be gone. And the only way that you would be able to own them or have them is if you manufactured them yourself. And so I highly recommend it, that people get out there and start learning.
He does not have one piece of CNC machinery.
Yeah, he's running all Bridgeports.
Yeah, he is totally old school. Actually, if you want to talk about mills, I mean, the old Gordons, according to Boots, are the best.
Yeah.
They're a lot better than Bridgeports, and that's Boots' opinion. I don't. I clearly I don't have the experience he does. So
I think they come. Well, you know what? I think that they actually come down. There's a point in which it's like a good firearm. Most firearms will outshoot the shooter, anyways. Same with a good CNC machine. There's a point in which you don't realize the quality or the benefits of a good machine until you reach a certain point. Most machines, Bridgepoint or will operate fine for you until your skill gets to the point in which you can actually see and get it. Then that's when you start looking at other VMCs and stuff. I learned that lesson the hard way. I could have destroyed 280 pieces of aluminum on a $600 machine just as well as I did on a $20,000-$30,000 machine. It's still they still effectively destroyed the aluminum until my skills got to the point to where they're at now. So, but I highly recommend, though, you got to learn how to do this stuff. Especially if you're a survivalist, because there's going to be a point where you're not going to be able to go to the store and buy it. You're going to have to make it yourself, and that's the one.
Well, if you want to talk about brands, I personally am partial to Jet machinery. Now, granted, Jet is an import, but it is first quality stuff. The small mill that I have right now, it's the only mill that I have, is a Jet. And I have 2 lathes. I have a Jet lathe and an old Atlas Craftsman. And I go into it, and because I haven't posted this yet, but I have 2 lathes for a reason. And the reason is that the Jet is a standard 13x40 engine lathe.
Yeah,
and it's got a quick change gearbox, just like any other lathe that's been manufactured for the last 40 years. unfortunately, with a lathe like that, you're limited as to what thread pitches you can do on the lathe, because generally speaking, that's the bread and butter work of lathe work is threading.
Yep.
With an Atlas, on the other hand, an old Atlas that has change gears like mine.
Yep.
You can do because I have two complete sets of gears, and you have to have the two complete sets in order to be able to do this. I can do any thread pitch from 4 threads per inch to 108, and anything in between. I can even do something like 22 and a half threads per inch.
Yeah.
You can't do that with something like my 13 by 40 jet with the quick change gearbox.
Yep.
Can't do it.
Yep. No, I mean my not my first lathe, but my first lathe that I had when I was up here was actually one that I bought from a gentleman whose his grandfather was German, and he actually built this lathe. It was a belt-driven lathe, leather belt. Had to go to the belt company here in Kenosha to get a belt for it, and it had the full set of gears, and that thing was incredible. The spindle on it went out, the bearing went out on it, but that thing was just, I love that. And that was something you want to look at. It was an antique. People look at it and go, oh my gosh. I'll tell you one thing, that lathe would cut threads. I mean, it was beautiful. It was the best, but the problem is
Boots probably had something like that in his shop.
Yeah, no. The problem is that most of the times where I'm cutting threads is because we're cutting threads to make cans or to put cans, on guns, and and obviously you don't want baffle strikes. So I had to defer. I wanted a little bit more precision. I mean, it would be perfect for most work, but I wanted a lot more precision. So we sourced a lot of that stuff out, to the higher end shops that had the, where we can guarantee, we can guarantee the precision. Even then, I'll tell you, I had an experience where I took it to a guy that highly recommended. Everybody was like, great. And his idea of tolerances and our idea of tolerances were completely at polar ends.
Well, Boots maintains that the lathe is the only piece of machinery, the way he put it, it's the only piece of machinery that can rebuild itself. He maintains that every part on a lathe, probably with the exception of the bed, obviously, every part on the lathe can be made on a lathe.
On a lathe? Yeah, I can see that. I'm not gonna argue with Boots. And for those that don't know, Boots, we're talking about Boots Obermeyer. Boots Obermeyer is a premier craftsman in barrel manufacturing. Anybody that's in this sport knows of his talents and knows of his barrels, and would not complain if you handed them a weapon with an Obermeyer barrel on it. Would not complain at all. So yeah, I have to defer and say, if he says so, I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna agree with you. But
now, granted, you might have to have a milling attachment for your lathe.
Yeah.
That's one of the other advantages of one of those old Atlas Craftsmen that I have. I have the milling attachment also.
Gotcha.
And those are really hard to find.
Yeah.
There was one. It was on Boots's list. He sends out a machinist. I'm on his machinist list, and there was one listed in Craigslist just a couple days ago, and this is just milling attachment.
Wow.
It was $150.
Did you suck that one up?
How you use that is you replace the the tool post holder.
Yeah.
On the cross slide, you install the milling attachment on that.
Yep.
And then what you do is you mount your tool bit in the chuck, or probably what would be best is if you had a 5C collet. Mount the tool bit in a 5C collet, and then you install what you're going to be machining in milling attachment. It's pretty neat little gizmo.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
Oh, absolutely. We're gonna have to get you up to the shop. Let you play. Yeah, let you see what we got going on up there. But like I said, most of the work we do now is, we're right there in the building. So I mean, we have plenty of machine shops, in the building now. So, but well, Tim, I got to push on. I got some news. I got some things at the top of the hour I was supposed to cover. So I want to get to that. But thank you once again, my friend. I am enjoying the fruits of your labor this week. This thing is incredible. I mean, I've actually, I'm sitting here. I'm still at awe. The amount of work that we're going to. We talked about Wolfman Jack over the weekend, and the fact that he started out in a chicken coop. Well, I can tell you, this ain't no chicken coop here, and I can't wait to get in here and tomorrow I'm going to get in here and do some voiceover work and get some work done, and I'm excited. But thank you, my friend, and once again, everybody who's listening, get out to 1776men.com. That is 1776men.com. Also, if you're in the shooting sports and you're thinking about reloading, the must-to books that you have to have in your library. I mean, they're not, one of the things I will have to say is they're not full of fluff and stuff. We get right down to the point in them and stuff. It's both of Tim's books, which eventually we will get listed up there at the marketplace and everything. So, Tim, with that, my friend, I gotta take care of some business and pay some bills here. And you take care. I'll be in touch with you, I'm sure, my friend.
Okay, Jeff, as always, I thoroughly enjoy this.
All right. Bye, Tim.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. So there you go. That was Tim joining us. It's just amazing. We talk about the friendships that you build when you, get into this business and everything. And like I said, I talking to Tim, I knew that, what he did. And I said, hey, look, I'm looking at building a studio here at the house. I'm going to need some help with that and everything. And he was more than willing to jump in and help us out and everything. So, and that just goes to show you. I mean, it's all about the community. It's all about, not sitting at home and in your own little world. Getting out, getting in, with other fellow patriots, and doing what having that conversation and everything. So, with that, like I said, I do have to apologize. We are working through some new technology here, some things in the studio that we've never used. And so I do have to apologize for some of the discombobulation and everything, but we'll get it worked out. I'm seeing some things that we need to change in some of the script. It's all automated and it's all programming like everything else. It's all programming. And so tonight's the first night that we actually ran the programming. But based upon what we're seeing here and everything, we'll get it. We will get it worked out. But you're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. Join me live every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. We're going to go to 12 a.m. Central Standard Time tonight. When I get back from the break, I've got about 7 topics I want to go over. So we got a lot still to cover. I want to talk about the mega default that's coming in China. You guys got to hear this. This ought to wake you up. Wars have been started. Now, obviously, we celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday today. I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about how the Democrats used use Dr. King's memory to their advantage? Of course they're going to. Obviously they're going to. We're going to talk about that. For out there for the prepper community, obviously, the coldest winter, we're going to be talking about some shortages that are coming down the pipe, so you guys are aware of. And then, of course, I don't know if you guys heard this, but Tony Blair almost was arrested. Not really. The least I'm going to let that happen. But there was a citizen arrest today, and then we're going to talk about the Ring of Steel, and then we'll get to that. And, of course, police brutality when we get back from our break. But you're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me live, like I said, every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time, and on the web at www.patriotfb.com.
Advertise to thousands of fellow patriots with Patriot FB Radio. Email advertise@patriotfb.com for more details.
Hi, I'm Trevor Moore. Due to the recent revelations that in order to fight terrorism, the NSA has been using a secret court order to spy on every single Verizon and AT&T customer, Americans have become outraged and concerned about their rights to privacy. But along with that concern comes a feeling of hopelessness. What can we do? Vote in new leaders? Well, the problem is that during an election, each candidate pretends to not be an ass. Then when they get the job, they reveal that they've actually been a complete ass this entire time. And just look at these people they're going to let us pick from in 2016. You think that they're not going to be giant ass? No, elections are of no use. The only way to fight back against our country's excessive wiretapping and data mining is to make it irrelevant. That's why we're launching Operation Everyone Talk Like a Terrorist all the time. If we all openly discuss terrorist plots in each of our phone conversations, then eavesdropping on those phone conversations becomes pointless. It's simple. We just need to work it into our daily vernacular. For example, instead of saying, "I love you," you could describe a terror attack. The larger the scale, the more you love the person.
Hi, Mom. I just got out of school. Can you pick me up?
I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm going to use a truck bomb to blow up the Brooklyn Bridge.
I'm mailing anthrax to Piers to Morgan.
And those are just a few examples. You can make up your own. Have fun with it. But it's time for us to stand up and protect our rights. Because those asses aren't going to. I'm going to set off a nuke at the MTV Movie Awards.
We need a hero, someone to save us from ourselves and our own self-destruction. God only knows we need help. Looking for a hero, someone who cares about the future, not about themselves, but about the idea of America. We need a hero, someone to show us the way. We need a hero who speaks for the people and what we have to say. We still believe this land of the free is still America. We still believe in the land of the free, and we need a miracle. You know this freedom is anything but free. What we have here depends on those who will fight for what they believe. When we stand together, there's nothing that we can't achieve. This nation of people stand
are listening to PatriotFB.com. Join us at www.patriotfb.com, a social network for patriots. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331.
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join us live every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time, or on the web at www.themidnightpatriot.com, and that will actually link over to, there you go, old dog, new tricks. That will actually link over to patriotfb.com. That is www.patriotfb.com. Take a look. Listen to some of our other shows. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have at 8 a.m., we're going to have AVN, American Voices Network, with Mike is going to join us. His show starts at 8 and goes until 10. And then right after that, obviously we're going to be playing our mix of country music, classic country, and classic rock and roll. And then we're going to roll it at the 2 o'clock hour, Central Standard Time. J.J. McCarty will have his show. He's got some great guests. Just some incredible, JJ is knocking down some incredible guests. Guys that are considered experts in this industry. And, these guys are in the know. So JJ, obviously has, great show lineup. Highly recommend that. And then, of course, you got me here from 9 p.m., the Schlotz of the group, from 9 p.m. till 12 a.m. Central Standard Time. Now, one of the things that we wanted to do is, obviously, Tim, Munitions Monday, kind of talk about all things firearms and, just different topics. If there's something you would like for us to cover during the show, please give us a call at 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. Love to hear from you. Now, one of the things, too, there was a question we didn't get to, and for Steve, we'll talk about this a little bit. Cross-draw holsters. I was asked, am I a fan of them? And, it's all about personal preference. And like anything, it's all about training. I personally don't like cross-draw or shoulder, what they call shoulder holsters. Remember the old cop movies? They still wear them. The detectives would wear them underneath their suits or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of those. And let me tell you why. Typically what happens, and it's all about practice and training and skill and, everything you got to do. But think about it. You are reaching across your body. You're pulling a firearm out, and you're making an arc movement. So basically, anybody in front of you, you're flagging. So that's why I am not a fan, an overzealous fan of the cross-draw holster, because you are flagging as you're bringing that weapon system into engagement. I like a good old holster up and out. So, like I said, though, it's personal preference. I mean, whatever works for you. It doesn't matter if you're going to do a standard holster up and out, or if you're going to do a shoulder holster or whatever. It all boils down to your practice and training. And I stress that with people, whoever, if you're looking to get a firearm, you got to take into account, we look at the prices of the firearm themselves, and we go, oh, this gun's $300, this gun's $1,000, whatever it is, right? There's a cost past that. It's like having, and I tell people this all the time, it's like having children. And, we're adults here. It's in the late evening. We're all adults here. It's like having children. Children are great. Making them, for obvious reasons, right? I have to side with Phil Roberts on this one. Making children great. What sucks is you gotta feed them, you gotta clothe them, You gotta put them to school. You gotta buy them cars. You gotta deal with their boyfriends. In my case, it's because I got all girls. But, and I tell people that, and tongue in cheek, but with firearms, buying a firearm is just the beginning. Now, you get your firearm, you're all like, oh, wow. You've got to spend, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I haven't been in the range as much as you got to at least once a month you have to go to the range to be proficient. One of the things about, firing a firearm and doing it correctly is that this thing called muscle memory in order to pull the trigger. And the problem is this. Think about all the things you do with your hands on a daily basis. On a daily basis. So everything you do, it's not like riding a bike. Once you learn it, you pretty much know it. Everything you do when it comes to firearms, you undo through life, through your daily, things that you progress through during the day. Trying to, getting that trigger finger to come straight back. You lose that. And it's all about muscle memory. So you have to be proficient with a firearm, you have to shoot every day. Now, there's another thing, too. And I'm going to disagree with the NRA here. Here we go. Don't flame me. I'm just going to say, the NRA teaches that the shot should surprise you, right? When you pull the trigger, the boom, that should surprise you. Absolutely not. A trained professional who knows their firearm, their system, and that are trained, when they pull that trigger, they ought to know when it's going to break. It ought to be a crisp break, but they ought to know. Take it up right here, boom. That they should know that. You should know that. That whole biscuit, it should surprise you, is absolutely amateur hour. Absolutely. Amateur hour. And if anybody tells you that, they're an amateur. I'm just going to tell you. Just kind of shake your head, be polite. The Southern in me says, be cordial, be polite. Don't call them out in front of a bunch of people at the gun range and tell them that you don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what. But I'm just telling you, when a firearm, when you pull that trigger, you ought to be so proficient, and you ought to know so much about your firearm, you ought to know when it's going to go boom. You should. And stuff. So I'm just telling you. I'm just kind of throwing that out there for you and everything. But, to answer the question that was there, posted up there on the website at patriotfb.com, I will tell you, it is my opinion, I don't like shoulder holsters just for the simple reason that you're flagging everybody as you're coming out. But, that's your personal preference. But like everything else, you need to practice no matter what you're using. So whatever works for you, my friend. Whatever works for you. So, I just wanted to say once again publicly, you guys every day, I get up, I'm telling you, we have good days, we have bad days. But when I get behind this microphone, when I come in here and I talk to you guys, it's just incredible. Guys like Tim, Joe, Steve, all you guys, Sue, it's incredible. You guys keep me going and everything. If you'd like to join in the conversation, give us a call, 1-800-580-4870. That's 1-800-580-4870. The lines are open. We have fixed the problem. So you don't have to be the guinea pig and everything. Another thing, too, is I want to kind of stress before the night gets too far away from us and everything, is the fact you guys got to get out to freedomprepper.com. That's freedomprepper.com. Now, they have put together just incredible shirts. And you're going to hear about this number and, here shortly. And one of the things that you just have to do is you got to get one of these shirts. I wish I was a little bit smaller or they had a size a little bit bigger. I'm going to get one made up for me. I'm a big guy. I'm no metrosexual here. I'm a big guy. And probably a lot bigger than I should be. Let's be honest with you. I can lose, a lot of weight and everything, but I'm a man, I'm the guy. I'm just telling you, ladies, I'm already spoken for, happily spoken for. But I will tell you, I'm a guy that you want when the shit hits the fan. I'm the guy. I'll keep you warm, and I am a country boy, and everything. So, but going back before we digress and everything, but get out there to freedomprepper.com. Take a look at those shirts. They're just incredible shirts. Now, there's a number on those shirts, and I'm gonna tell you what that number means before the night gets away from us. The number's 22. Now, it's not an inside number. It's not a secret. I'm gonna share that with you right now. 22. Why is that number so important? Well, that number is actually a disgrace. That is a disgraceful number. That is a number that no American should ever be proud of. That number should be stricken from our national psyche. That number is a number that is completely unacceptable. And why? Why is that number unacceptable? That number is unacceptable because that represents the number of men and women in the armed services, past, present, who've committed suicide every day. That is a number that is completely, if you are a true American patriot, that is a number that should be appalling to you. In this world, in this government's desire to balance budgets and bring spending under control, they have completely missed the ball on this, like so many other things. There is an open war against our military, the men and women who serve this country with honor and distinction. You don't have to go far in the news to see that. And that number, 22, is a number that just exemplifies the problem that we face here in America. With the average wait time that a service member has to wait in order to get services, get the help that they need through the VA system or through the government, is about 354 days. That number is unacceptable as well. That is a number that we should not sleep at night having that number on our conscience. And it's because of that number we have the number 22. I find it appalling. I find it disgraceful. If you're to take up any fight, take this fight up. Let the men and women of the armed services know that we are thinking of them. And what better way to do that than wear that shirt? We sometimes have to shame ourselves in order to bring a travesty to light. And the travesty is that 22 men and women today, will choose to end their lives after serving their country with honor and distinction. It's a disgrace. 22 in a day, 22 in a week, 22 in a month, 22 in a year, 22 in a decade, 22 in a century. That's 22 soldiers too many. So get out to freedomprepper.com, get your shirt, let the men and women of the arms, all the proceeds of those shirts will go to benefit the veterans. No, Scott, I know he's a great guy. Him and his wife designed the shirts, but get those out, get those out there. Start wearing those shirts. I'm going to have some made for me so I can wear them as well. I'll get them out here. Now, you'll see them because we are actually going to be putting videos into the studio. There you go. I've always said I got a face for radio, but no, we'll put a video in here and stuff so that you guys can see, and I can talk to you, and we can do conferencing. There you go, teleconference. We can all look at each other and have conversations and stuff. But no, get out there, get those shirts, and with that, I want to go ahead and start our tribute to those that have fallen. For those that are just joining us for the first time, we don't ever forget the men and women of our armed services. As long as there's men and women who are putting themselves in harm's way, we will always honor them with our tribute. Army Chief Warrant Officer Andrew L. McAdams, January 10th, 2014. Army Sergeant Drew M. Scobie, January 10th, 2014. Army Staff Sergeant First Class William K. Lacey, January 4th, 2014. Marine Sergeant Jacob M. Hess, January 1st, 2014.
Just for 1 second, put yourself in their boots. Turn your back on everything you know right now. With the whole world to lose, you got no dinner with the family. You got no home, no luxury car. Just a welcome to the battlefield, 'cause it's time to go to war. They do it for me and they do it for you. In the red, white, and blue. Amen to the ones on the battlefield.
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me on the web every Monday through Friday from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Central Standard Time, or on the web, www.patriotfb.com. That is www.patriotfb.com. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break here, get back from the break, and we're going to get into the news. What we'll probably do is that we'll just let it roll right into the evening and everything. We still got a lot of things to cover. And I do apologize. We're trying to get some of the system down. We are going to be putting up our show clock. We do have a new system that actually has to be filled out, so you guys will see the show and what we're going to be talking about the night, or for that day, topics of the day. We'll get those things posted up probably around 4 or 5 o'clock. And of course, we'll leave room open for information that comes in after the show starts. But, we're going to get those things posted up there for you ahead of time. We're getting a little bit more organized now that we have our new studio. But when we're going to take a break, like I said, when we get back from the break, we will continue on, my friends, and we will talk about upcoming bank failure in China. In China, it's getting bad. And China's going to let them fail. They're going to let them fail. The government is. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the impact of that. We'll also talk about Martin Luther King and also Munitions Monday.
Support Stone Anthony for President. www.stoneanthony2016.com. Put a real American in the White House. Advertise to thousands of fellow patriots with Patriot FB Radio. Email advertise@patriotfb.com for more details.
I had PTSD. Once I was back from Iraq, I was distant from everybody in my family. We had a reunion of our unit, and you'd hear these spouses say, "Is your husband doing that? My husband's doing that too. I thought it was just us." And really understanding that, hey, this is a common experience.
I learned more to listen to what he was saying, and that made it easier for me to understand where his pain was coming from.
Resources are available for military families. Learn more at realwarriors.net.
Listening to PatriotFB.com. For all your prepping needs, visit our friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com or call 208-615-6331. 208-615-6331.
You're listening to the Midnight Patriot Radio Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join me on the web at www.themidnightpatriot.com. That is www.themidnightpatriot.com. So what we're going to do is, like I said, we're just going to roll into the rest of the evening here. We're going to cover some of our news and everything, and we're going to tighten our ship up. I can't wait. I'm excited, believe it or not. I am excited about the fact that we're going to get a little bit more structured here at Patriot FB and everything. So, as we said earlier, now this is something that ought to be scaring you. And it does concern me because wars have started over things like this. Obviously, China owns our debt, the majority of our debt. they've actually surpassed the Federal Reserve in the amount of debt that they hold of the United States. Now, China, we talked about this on the show, last week, that China, like any good investor, they don't want to see your investment. You don't want to see you underinvested, right? They don't want to see you not having enough money. It's not something that any good investor ever wants to see, right? They want to make sure they've been pumping money into our economy, and rightfully so. Our economy has then in turn been pumping it into them by their employment. They've got to keep their people working. They don't, they got billions of people that they got to feed. We got millions. They got billions. Huge difference. And the problem is that if they don't feed their people don't have a way of supporting themselves. Take our 43% here in the United States that live off of the government and multiply that by tenfold. And then go and tell them that they're not going to get a check. There's not enough bullets. There's not enough bullets in China to stop the uprising. There wouldn't be. So naturally, China is now concerned. And with this posting that's starting, mega default in China scheduled for January 31st. This is out of Forbes magazine. Gordon Chang. On Friday, Chinese state media reported that Chinese credit trust company warned investors that it may not be able to repay one of its wealth management products when it matures on January 31st, the first day of the year of the horse. Now, one thing you got to realize is that China, very symbolic country. Everything has symbolism. So the first day of their new calendar, the year of the horse, you're going to have this major default of a Chinese bank. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China sold the China Credit Trust product to its customers in the Inland Siuik province. This bank, the world's largest by assets, world's largest bank, not Chase Manhattan, but by assets, on Thursday suggested it will not compensate investors, stating in a phone interview with Reuters that a situation completely does not exist in which ICBC will assume the main responsibility. In other words, oh well. There should be no mystery why this investment, known as the 2010 China Credit Equals Gold Number 1 Collective Trust Product, if it's got a name that's like 20 syllables, what would we rename this? Like most banking products these days. Number one product to screw investors. Or whatever they want to call it. But here's the name. I wouldn't invest in this. 2010 China Credit, and this is I'm going to read it to you. This is how would you invest in this? 2010 China Credit Equals Gold number 1 collective trust product. Number 1. Is on the verge of default. China Credit Trust loaned the proceeds from sales of 3.3 billion yen, 496 million, product to unlisted Saxion Energy Group, a coal miner. The coal company probably is paying something like 12% for the money because Credit Equals Gold promised a 10% annual return to investors, more than 3 times the current bank's deposit rates, and China Credit Trust undoubtedly took a hefty cut in interest. Now, I will tell you, there are some executives at these Chinese banks who come February 1st won't be alive. That's just the way they roll in China. But regardless of that, they're talking about 5.9 billion yuan in obligations. 5.9 billion yuan. This is going to send ripples through the financial markets worse than any United States bank default. And let me tell you why. Remember, the Chinese government has been propping up their currency, their economy, for so long. The world economy has always said, forget about America of recent. China, just economic powerhouse. You are now starting to see the cracks in the Great Wall of China finance. You're starting to see the failure of their banks, of their lending systems. Why is that significant? Why should we care? Well, when XYZ company can't pay its bills, the first thing that the debtors, people that are owed the money, do is they start calling on accounts receivables. So if I can't pay my accounts payables, things that I got to pay, the bills I got to pay, I start looking at my accounts receivables. I look at people that owe me money, that haven't paid me, and I start collecting. So you got to remember, there are no private enterprises in China. None whatsoever. They are all owned and operated by the People's Republic of China, the government. That's what you get when you get socialism. So when this bank defaults and can't pay back its investors, can't pay its obligations, can't make loans to an industry, that's going to have a far-reaching effect on the world economy. And not only that, but when you can't pay your debts, why would you loan, right? If I have a bill for $1,000, why would I loan someone $20,000? Knowing that I'm not going to get it back. It's different if you know you're going to get it back. But America hasn't paid on its principal from day one. So we're seeing that. We need to be watching this because this is how wars start. This is exactly, if you look at the World War I, World War II, this is exactly how wars start. And that's why it is important that we don't just say, "Oh, it's China's problem." We need to watch this because this is going to fast become our problem as well. Now, moving on. Obviously, today, we celebrated Martin Luther King's legacy life. Now, granted, there's a lot of conversation about plagiarism, womanizing, whatever. Martin Luther King's premise. He's a man. Like all men, he has faults. But his premise of equality, his belief and his fight for social injustice, against social injustice, cannot be denied. I would venture to say, what would Dr. Martin Luther King say today at the youth of America? Would he be appalled? Would he be supportive? Gun violence, we hear about gun violence and how Martin Luther King would be against gun violence. I think any person with any level of intelligence is against gun violence. I mean, I don't know of anybody who supports the use of violence, period, unless it's justified. So it's amazing that the libtards, the liberals out there will say, well, Martin Luther King was alive today, he would be against gun violence. Well, I'm against gun violence. But the thing that they, in all of their political correctness, the one thing that they fail to talk about is, I believe, if Martin Luther King was alive today, he would be ashamed of what people have done with his legacy. And let me talk about this. He worked hard to advance minorities in this country. He has fought for that. He's been persecuted. He's been assassinated, obviously, arrested, persecuted, everything. To only have a country in which there's probably more, and I don't want to say, there is physical racism, and that's appalling. And most Americans are appalled by that behavior. So the nation's conscious level towards his cause is, we're awoke. We're awoken. We are. And so as we sit and think about the legacy of this man, and we hear about how the race baiters, and there are race baiters out there now, people who will use Martin Luther King's legacy and his fight to their advantage and their financial advantage. We see it. Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, all of those. And you have to ask yourself, would Martin Luther King approve of America today? And I would say no, because I don't approve of America today. Don't have to be a religious man, don't have to be a man of conviction to see that there's something seriously wrong between the haves and the have-nots. And a lot of it has to do with, and I'm just going to say this outright, the oppression of minorities in this country. There has been an open oppression against minorities. Now, I know a lot of you guys will say, well, affirmative action, blah, 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 blah. That's a form of oppression, because what it is that they are still under the yokes. When you can't be a free person, when you live in object squalor, when you are not given an education. Now, a lot of you will say, rightfully so, that they have the same education opportunities as everybody else. And I will say to you, you're correct. However, the part that you are forgetting is that this government has eroded the family values, the family system, that support. We can build a house. You use the thing about the foundation. We can build a house anywhere. You build it on sand, though, and it will fall. And so this government might say, well, we give them the same opportunity. You might say, we give them the same opportunities. We give the minorities the same opportunity. And that's not true. Because what has happened, and we are actually seeing it now in our community, we are seeing the erosion, something that's been going on ever since Martin Luther King took up the fight, the good fight. We are now seeing it bleed into our community. And a lot of people out there will say, and I disagree, but let's talk about it. We're all adults here. A lot of people will say that that's because they have infiltrated our community, and I don't believe that at all. That is completely wrong. I think what we see is that they have perfected it in a community in which people could not fight back. They perfected it there, and now they're rolling it across the board. That's what we're seeing. But going back to, this government has eroded the foundations of the number one resource of this country. That's its people, its families. Now, I find it amazing the liberals, the Democrats but they do this. I don't find it amazing. I find it appalling. I don't find it amazing. It's the typical stuff. They will stand on the shoulders of Martin Luther King. At the same time, it was their Democrat organization which formed the Ku Klux Klan, which formed the Knights, which formed slavery. It was the Republicans who fought to abolish slavery, who fought to expel the tenets of the KKK. This is amazing. But, like I said, there is a level of oppression. It is so deep and so prolific in this country that the oppressed now, so convergence, the oppressed now worship their master. And the oppressed now feels that their master, they must be at the boot of their master in order to survive. So you got to ask yourself, is this the legacy? Is this the dream that Martin Luther King had for people, of all people? A lot of people say his people, of all people. I say, no, he would be appalled. He would be appalled by and he would say that there is still a huge fight. There is a huge inequality in this country, and it's not inequality of services or whatever. It's an inequality in the erosion of the family value. The Democrats and all those and stuff, those guys are all about family. They all hang out with each other. They have their parties, right? You had a big 50th wedding anniversary. They had their family values. But they don't translate that to our inner cities, to our cities, to our rural areas either. They're doing everything possible to erode your family. As your kids are going to school and learning about immoral behavior and being told to accept it, the president's kids are going to a private school learning about the ABCs and math and sciences. They're not part of this big social program called Common Core. They're not exposed to it. So as we celebrate Martin Luther King, with all his faults, but he is a man. We all have faults. Ask yourself, would he be appalled? And I say yes. He was not appalled for what you think he would be appalled for. I think he's appalled in the sense that we have actually taken a step back. We have enslaved more men and women in recent history through economic and slavery, through erosion of moral and family values. We have turned them away from God and towards the ways of men. And I say to that, we have a long ways to still go. So, now, changing topics once again. Just wanted to talk about, for preppers. We talk about, last week it was water, with what happened in Virginia. This week, we are facing another crisis with the impending cold and weather that's coming. We are finding here in the Midwest that there are propane shortages. So I ask you, join us here on Thursday as we talk with Prepper Recon. But you better have an alternative for your heat source. I mean, just like water, it can get contaminated. There could be disruptions in supply. So you need to have an alternative to your heat source. Can't rely on electric. Can't rely on gas. If gas lines break, especially when the weather's 0 degrees. We've seen it 50 below, where you could take a glass of water and throw it in the air and it instantly turns to ice. There's no blanket that will keep you warm. You need fire. You need heat. I will tell you, I can live days without eating, probably. I can't freeze. I couldn't do it. So you need to get out the Prepper Recon, get out to his website, look at alternative energy sources, get out to Freedom Prepper, read some of their articles. But more importantly, go out to a host or to a sponsor of the show, Mountain View Off-Grid Living. That's Mountain View Off-Grid Living. They have alternative heat sources, ovens. They're not cheap, but when you go out and you're going to buy your plasma TV, that's just going to do nothing but give the government an entry into your home. When you're going to go out there and spend that money on that vacation, for a week, ask yourself, do I have all my bases at home covered? Do I have enough storable food that I can survive a month, 2 months, a year? Do I have enough water? Ask yourself that. But, heat, it's probably overlooked so much. Ask yourself, do you have the things you need to heat your home? Keep your family warm if you were to lose your primary heat source. And like I said, Mountain View Off-Grid Living, they have an awesome stove. I know about I did some research. The designer, it was originally done for boats. I mean, I know the design. I've seen it actually. After I first saw it, I was like, well, wait a minute. I've seen that in a couple of cabin cruisers, sailboats that I've seen. The technology, it works. It's good stuff. So get out there and take a look at those. But like I said, we are seeing shortages in propane supplies, and it's only going to get it's only going to get worse. You know, obviously, with the Olympics, you know, we're talking some things out there in the news. You know, our government's getting ready for a major event. The Russian government's getting ready for a major event. We're just gonna kind of watch that, keep our eyes on the ground. You know, the big thing is you know, you got to be leery of a false flag type of event. What we mean by false flag is these are events that were actually construed by government agencies to take control of the people. I mean, obviously in Russia, it's their country. They can do whatever they want. Got to kind of watch our government and see what they're doing. But once again, our government and its inability to act with other governments, I believe, are somewhat culpable in this. The Russian President Vladimir Putin was reaching out to the American government after the Boston bombings, and we turned our backs on them. Actually, we threw them under the bus, tried to make it sound like it was Russia's fault, after Russia tried to warn us of these individuals, the brothers. So we just need to keep an eye on that. You know, it is a travesty that a sporting event has become so commercialized that it is now a target for terrorists. And it has everything to do with target for terrorists. If it was just sports, it would be sports. But it's become so, the terrorists know all the eyes of the world are going to be on Sochi. The terrorists know that, you know, there's so much commercial value. The terrorists know that Russia, you know, when countries invest in the Olympics, there is such an economic stake at play. Sometimes we forget about the athletes. We forget about camaraderie through sports. We forget about the unification of different beliefs through sports. But no, we instead worship brands. We worship people. And the terrorists know that. If you want to see what's wrong with this country, see what this world, see what the terrorists are attacking. Don't think for a moment that I support the terrorists, but look at what they're attacking. There's a reason why they pick those targets. In some cases, it might be to destroy what they represent. In a lot of the cases. But most of the time, they're there to destroy what they represent. And what do I mean by that is that, you know, they attack places of other religion because they don't like any other religion but theirs. But they also attack commercial entities because they know that the evil and the heart of the issue is rooted in commercialism. They know that. Like I said, if you want to know what's wrong with this world, look at what the terrorists are attacking. Analyze it. It'll give you a clear picture. Now, Tony Blair, for war crimes, an encounter between a former prime minister and a short ditch barman, Twiggy Garcia. Go Twiggy, my hero. Twiggy tried to file a citizen's arrest against the once prime minister, Tony Blair. You know, you got to ask yourself, how does a man whose salary is X, right? Guy makes X. How does he afford XYZ? Just asking. Do your own research. Do your own research. The man gets a pension, a set amount, but yet he's living almost 10 times over that. How does that happen? I'm not saying anything, but I am saying something. Take a little closer look at Mr. Tony Blair. One of the things, too, is that, we are watching this new IRS rule that would scuttle Tea Party. Constitutional law expert tells WND and the IRS hasn't stopped targeting conservative groups, including Tea Party. It's just trying a different approach, one of the many impossibles to stop. Yeah. Many have heard of the president's repeated promise last week to bypass Congress to accomplish his goal, saying, I am going to act on my own if Congress is deadlocked. I've got a pen. Remember that? To take executive action where Congress won't, and I've got a telephone to rally folks around the country on this mission, around the country on this mission. He's got a pen and a phone, people. He'll use it too. He will do executive orders. And then, of course, he's going to call his mainstream media buddies, and they're going to sell you a bill of goods. How do you get put on that do not call list, Mr. President? How do I not get called? How do I make sure that none of your navigators show up on my doorstep? But another effort to fundamentally transform the American political system has gone little noticed and barely reported in mainstream media. Of course not. And it may have many conservatives alarmed about its possible side effects on the elections and free speech because they are virtually powerless to prevent it. The proposal would change the rules for a type of tax-exempt political organization called a 501c4, which typically engages in citizen education and grassroots lobbying. The new rule will remove tax-exempt status for certain political activities by redefining them as candidate-related political activities. In other words, if you're not for them, you're for their opposition, and thus you're for another candidate. So so you're part of a PAC. So you can't endorse. You can't, if you're a religious organization, you can't endorse a candidate, even though their candidate goes against your religious beliefs. That's what they're doing here. So they are now